You guys just disappeared on me. All right. So what I'm going to kind of chat about today, again, this is relatively informal, but as we all know, there's been a lot of changes with iOS. And the subject I'm speaking on is iOS 15 specifically, because Omnisend is a marketing automation platform, which means we focus on email, SMS, push notifications, and so forth. But iOS 15, I'll kind of dive into what all is changing specifically around that and how it affects us, and how it affects merchants, how it affects consumers. But just a quick backstory on who Omnisend is. So Omnisend, as I mentioned, marketing automation, we were founded in 2014, actually based, our headquarters for development, everything is actually based out of Vilnius, Lithuania. However, we've got a team of about 25 here in the US now. So we started building that team last January, and there's 3 of us that sit here in Austin, and we're actually doing a very small grand opening of our US office next Friday in Charleston, South Carolina. So we've got a fairly decent sized team. Of the 25 we have, about 17 sit in the Charleston area. But there are 3 of us floating around here in the Austin area, myself, and then 2 of our sales reps. So don't be surprised if you ever see us at a meetup or something like that. But as I mentioned, offices in US, Lithuania. We also have some offices in the UK, some employees in France, London, et cetera. So Omnisend itself, about 170 employees, bootstrap, no outside funding or anything like that. So our growth is all tied to our customer success. As I mentioned, e-commerce focused, email and SMS is really our core functionality in which we offer. Marketing automation, so the ability to do things like cart abandonment, welcome series, really just kind of automating a lot of that user journey or that customer journey is one of the biggest things that we help with. We work on 5 channels in total, email, SMS being the main. There's also push notification. And then we've got integrations with Google and Facebook for doing things like ad retargeting and lookalike audiences. And I probably should have updated this. We actually just rolled out an integration. So with 6 channels, we just rolled out an integration with Amazon to better track email attribution. So we're one of the first companies to actually integrate with Amazon's advertising tool to help merchants fully understand the purchase funnel of customers who are coming through the email channel. I mentioned earlier 5 e-commerce platforms that we work with: Shopify, Shopify Plus, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, and Magento, and then open API integrations as well. Over 80 e-commerce integrations, some of the most popular ones out there, whether it's a Smile.io or Recharge, Yotpo, Nosto, you name it, we integrate with them. But work with about 65,000 merchants across the world. Here are some of the logos in which we work with. Probably one of my favorite is Lego. I'm still a child at heart, and there's Lego monster truck over here on my shelf. So it's I had mentioned earlier, I'm from North Carolina originally, and for some reason, as a little kid growing up in North Carolina, everyone had to like grave digger. So I've got a small Lego grave digger over there. So anyways, enough about Omnisend. Don't want to make this a pitch for Omnisend. Obviously, if you ever have questions about marketing automation, I'm happy to answer that. But really wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about what's changing with iOS and why this is so important. So ultimately, what's changing? There's 3 main things that are affecting the email channel when it comes to iOS 15. And the reason this is a big deal is people say, oh, well, this is only Apple, and whatnot. But the reason this is a big deal is because 38.9% of all emails opened in July were actually opened through an iOS device, according to Litmus. So when you think about all the devices out there, whether it's desktop, a PC, a Android device, or something else, like that's a staggering amount of opens for one operating system. And oftentimes what we've seen is, while Apple is the first one to really roll these specific changes out that we're going to talk about, we expect to see others follow suit, whether it's Gmail or Yahoo. They're likely going to start cracking down on some of these things. But what they're changing is they're changing our ability as a service provider to track opens of email. Like that's the biggest thing that we see changing here. They're also giving the ability to block IP address. So things like geo-targeting and understanding where customers may be opening an email and so forth. That's going to be a challenge moving forward. And they're also introducing the ability for consumers to hide their email address. So that last piece, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because this is actually it's a consumer-based action they have to take every single time they're subscribing to an email or putting their email address in there. So we actually, historically, they've not seen a whole lot of adoption with features like that. So kind of like the pre-fill email, that's going to work, but consumers are going to have to opt in at time of sign up on every single time. So we don't anticipate that being a massive change for the market, but the top two things that are changing are definitely very important for the email marketing industry and merchants and agencies and so forth all alike. So those are the things that are changing, and really what's important, and we'll unpack them a little bit, but is how do we prepare for these changes? So when you think about losing the ability to open or track opens, there's so much that merchants and agencies have done to date around email activity and tracking the open rate. And there's been a lot of conversation over the past couple of months or the past 6-7 weeks since this is rolled out of, is email open rate a vanity metric? Some people think it is, some people think it's super important, but ultimately, whenever you start thinking about email itself, the best way to prepare is start gathering a baseline today and understand, what your click-through rates are today. And, your click-through rates oftentimes today are based from, opens and clicks. Did they open that email? Well, the shift here is going to be going away from the open rate, but more to delivery. So, tracking your click versus delivered. So your metrics might change slightly, but it's really good to see where you're at today. So start thinking about, okay, I delivered this many messages, how many actually click through? So we'll still be able to track those clicks once they come back to the site, because there is a cookie there. But it's really, really good to make sure that you're establishing that baseline ahead of time before these changes come into play. The expectation of these changes are probably going to kick in sometime in mid-September to early October, just in time for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So it's really imperative that you start thinking about these things today and implementing these changes ahead of time. So it's, first step is make sure you gather a baseline of where you're at today and start thinking about, instead of opens versus clicks, maybe deliveries versus clicks. So that's a really, really important thing to think about. Something else to think about is your deliverability. This is really, really important to think about is, list hygiene. Ultimately, one of the most challenging things for merchants that we've seen is when we've had conversations with merchants before, we've had awful deliverability. And it really comes down to, are they practicing good list hygiene to begin with? Are the customers or the consumers in which they're sending to actively engaged with their brand itself? So it's really, really, really important to start thinking about list hygiene now, if you haven't already, and figure out how to clean up your list ahead of these changes that are coming. So start looking at those who haven't opened in the past, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever that KPI or that indicator is. Start thinking about, does it make more sense for me to actually clean and maybe suppress them, or should I run a re-engagement campaign with them, trying to get them actively engaged with my brand prior? But it's really, really, really important to make sure that you're churning the unengaged subscribers ahead of these changes, because your unengaged subscriber, the KPI or the metric around that's going to change come September. So it may be, instead of opens, you have to go off of clicks now, or their website activities. So it's while you can take a look at the open rates and think about suppressing those who are not actively working with your brand or engaged with your brand today. So that's something really, really, really important. And good list hygiene is going to be even more important with these changes, because there is going to be a lack of understanding of the, the open rates within those emails. So, definitely start thinking about that and thinking about, how do I only work with those who seem like they want to engage with that brand. This seems really baseline, and there's not a whole lot of words here on this side of on the slide itself, but you need to, if you're not already, you need to make sure you're starting to gather more information on your customers. So first party data becomes ultra important, and zero party data becomes incredibly important as well. Zero party data, it's been a buzzword I've been hearing a ton recently, very early in the days of email marketing. And I've been in this space for over 10 years now, in the marketing automation space. And years ago, zero party data was all that email platforms had. And zero party data, what that is thinking about gathering preferences. So if you're a sporting goods retailer, what sports are you interested in? Is it soccer? Is it football? Is it lacrosse? Is it hiking, fishing, camping? Whatever it may be. That's an example of zero party data. What their home address is, what their shipping address is. Like those are data points in which the consumer is actively giving you themselves, and they're essentially opting in to give you that information because they want to make sure that it's the weirdest thing about this whole change is the more we start locking down the ability to personalize, I think honestly we're going to see it frustrate consumers more, because consumers have shown that they're 60% more likely to open an email or engage with an email when it's personalized. And people like getting personalized emails. I personally, when I remember years ago, I used to buy Fossil watches all the time, and I had bought a couple directly through Fossil, and they would always send me emails for women's products, and I had never bought a women's watch through them. I'd never even searched through women's watches. They weren't even using the baseline zero party data or the purchase behavior to segment and target their list. It just kind of blew my mind an organization that large was doing that. But it's really, really important to make sure that you're thinking about how you can leverage that zero party data. When I talk about first party data, and we'll dive into this just a little bit more here in just a few minutes too, is what is that website behavior telling you? Are you tracking what a consumer is looking at? Are they looking at men's products versus women's products? Do they only look at sell items? It's very, very imperative that you have tools that allow you to understand who John Pruitt is as an individual versus Lori. And because she and I both have different preferences, we're not shopping for the same thing, all the time. So it seems really rudimentary, but I can't tell you how many merchants we talk to who this is something they're not doing. But ultimately, the more first party and zero party data that you can gather from a consumer, the better interaction you're going to have with email down the road. And kind of leading into that, you need to start thinking about more powerful segmentation. So, adjusting your segments to include more than just open rates. And, we talked about clicks, we're talking about site activity, their order history. It's super, super important that you start leveraging all of this information in your messaging to them, because again, people are not going to engage if you're not sending them information that's relevant to themselves. So, thinking about engagement, just kind of a few tips to think about here. And I told you this would be fairly quick. And I've got, I think, 4 or 5 points here. Is think about, are you currently, if you're a merchant or you're an agency helping a merchant, are you using the right platform, the right e-commerce platform? Is the data that you need visible? Can you hook up an ESP to that data? Like if you're not pushing all of your browsing behavior into your email marketing platform, or you do not have the ability, then it's time to start thinking, okay, maybe I need a new e-commerce platform. You want to be able to make sure that you're clicking or you're tracking, all those click rates, all the revenue that's associated with an individual. So it's super, super important to think about that. And then, some of the other areas is, are you converting your site traffic into subscribers? So maybe you're on the right e-commerce platform, but maybe you haven't done a whole lot around conversion rate optimization. So, you can drive all the traffic you want, but if you're not putting, relevant offers, or you're not thinking about how do I speed up checkout and things like that, it's really, really important to think about how you can start converting that site traffic to paid customers as quickly as possible, and make sure that you're putting relevant content out there to your consumer base. So if you're tracking the website behavior and you see that 60% of your customers are going to look at one specific category, maybe that's the category that's on your hero image. So just start leveraging that data. Shameless plug for OmniSend. Are you using the right email platform? Now, we may not be the best fit for everybody, but if you've got just kind of a basic mentality of spray and pray, or batch and blast, so one message to all, that's something you're going to want to really reconsider. So if you're using an email marketing platform or marketing automation platform that doesn't give you the insights to segment and automate your messages, I would strongly consider looking at another provider, whether it's us or someone else. Certainly make sure that you're focused on being able to leverage the data that you can capture, because there's still so much valuable data out there. We've kind of deemed, the hashtag that I keep see floating around is opens are dead, but email is not. There's still so much you can do with email and understanding, what your consumers purchase or browsing behavior looks like. And then finally, it's really, really important to start thinking about the creative in your emails. So one of the challenges, we're not going to be able to do a whole lot of, you're not going to be able to do A/B tests based off of open rates anymore, but you can still do A/B tests based off the creative, and if you've got good creative today that's working well, make sure that you're, putting a star beside of that. Make sure that you're going to be saving that for future use, or think about the things that people are engaging with while you still can rigorously test all of that creative, whether it's, the format of an email, whether it's specific images, products, just make sure that while you still can to test all the creative you possibly can. And then after the change is implemented, you're going to be testing, you can still test things like subject lines, get creative with them, start using emojis and understanding how people are interacting. You can test, you'll instead of an open rate being the KPI and what you're looking at for those tests, it's going to be click-through rate. Maybe it's revenue generated, because ultimately that's the big thing. Open rates don't necessarily mean revenue. The further down the funnel you get, so a click-through rate gets you that much closer to revenue than an open rate. So let's focus on how we can drive more clicks versus opens, because ultimately the people who are opening, you want to make sure that you're driving them to your website. And then the other things like the conversion rate optimization, like that's when it comes into play. So think about steps further down the funnel that are ultimately going to help you drive engagement and drive more revenue. Last thing to leave you with, I'm happy to answer questions too. For anyone who has any questions or wants to learn a little bit more, we created opensardead.com. And this isn't just OmniSend information. This is information from other email experts. There's tweets on there. There's blog posts. There's webinars that we've hosted, partners have hosted, whatever. I mean, there's a ton of information at opensardead.com. So please feel free to go visit this, use it as a resource, bookmark it. And as we get closer to this date, and they still haven't set it in stone, but again, September, October, continue to visit back for more tips and tricks on how to ultimately drive more engagement and revenue through the email channel.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, John. So Cody, the other end of this, how are you handling this with advertising?
Yeah, good information right there, John, too. I got to admit that more than of our income revenue generated comes to email. So, and we obviously.
Oh, no. We're having technical problems now.
Am I breaking up?
Oh, I'm going to mute myself again so you don't have the dogs in.
Is everything good now? Okay, so we heavily can I share my screen? Okay, let's see. All right, perfect. I'm going to share this, and I'm going to pop up to this, and I'm going to give a little bit of an idea. All right. So a little background real quick on me. I started at Target Diamond Marketing downtown Minneapolis. We built the first ever paid Facebook ads team there at Target. We're one of a handful of major retailers that used Facebook ads to sell their .coms. The other ones were obviously like Walmart. We launched the Power Editor for Facebook in 2013. So when it comes to the Facebook ads, it's been doing for a little bit of time. One of the apps that we launched for Target was called Cartwheel, and it helped us to work directly with Facebook to understand how to track the app downloads from an ad. So if you ran an ad, someone clicked the ad, downloaded an app, how do you track that information? So after I left Target and realized I could sell some products online, that's when I became a typical entrepreneur and started going on at myself. We started PCG ecommerce in 2016. We focus on apparel, furniture, and outdoor products. Like I said, fishing poles, apparel lines, furniture. There's everything like couches and tables and chairs, and so we advertise in every major channel that you can advertise. And again, to John's point, OmniSend, more than half of our revenue is generated through email marketing. We are direct response marketing with paid ads team, and half of our team is marketers. So we have a split between paid ads and email marketing. We got a graphic design as well. But here's a little secret: crush your ads after this iOS apocalypse, everyone calls it. And the background problem is that you have bad data now. So with us basically off what you can and cannot get from this standpoint, you get data in your marketing ad platforms. What that means is in the Facebook world is you're turning off winning Facebook ads or ad sets maybe too early. You're not giving them time. Facebook's telling you one thing, but in the end, it's actually something else. You have major swings in your performance with advertising, and most people will say, "Hey, my CPAs are skyrocketing. I'm not getting a ton of purchases." It's 1 week it's great, the next week it's awful, or day to day you're seeing high CPAs, low CPAs, and you can't get a good solid baseline for running paid ads, leveraging Facebook because of this iOS problem. So solution is we kind of need some AI. We need some computer to help us get good data, so we don't turn off these winning ad sets and ads. And we get those swings in performance. And how we figured out how to do that was actually going to the third-party platform. I think John's alluding to this earlier, that we call HighRoast. HighRoast is the ability to ensure that you have good data. So you could obviously you're winning Facebook ads and ad sets. You're only to kill the actual losers, no killing ads that are performing well. And then the problem that you still run into is it's difficult to scale a Facebook ad because you need a babysitter every day. You still have to be in the Facebook ad manager managing ads. Email your data, you're in there every single day, and you're looking at what the data shows from Facebook. HighRoast, even when you get your data, you still are going to have major swings. And the way you can, alleviate your swings with ads are just making sure you bump out the amount of time you look at your ads. So instead of looking day to day or even week to week, start looking at that 14 days or 30 days or 90 windows with how your ads perform. Your long-term data with HighRoast and a longer window of data is going to allow you to alleviate any major pains with their marketing and advertising. The second solution was, now that I had good data, and leveraging the good data, HighRoast is you have the mix of your Facebook and your UTM tracking. That's how HighRoast works. You insert Facebook, you can UTM URLs and UTM. It actually pulls in the correct data into your e-commerce business, whether Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, 3D, whatever it may be, and then ties this into whatever might be Bing ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, organic thing. Whatever it be, you can tie the UTM wherever the channel, and HighRoast is going to give you the good data. But now with Magix, I don't know if anybody heard this before, and I feel like I'm two software solution. But the good part about mixing these two softwares are they're third party and they don't rely on each other or any other platform to tell them how they can digest the information that they're given. With the 2, you can scale your winning ads. You're only going to kill the losers. And now with Magics, you can set automation to scale based on your daily and long-term performance. So what I alluded to earlier was when you look at the 14, 30-day, 60, 90-day windows, you can now allow automation to kick in, and your longer term periods of ads are going to, your good data comes from Hyros to start giving you a solid baseline for your marketing efforts. This is kind of before we launched a brand in early March of 2021. Just running through the same troubles most people run through. Trying to figure out if data's coming from Facebook's accurate. One day's bad. You can see blips and whatnot. And then you can see we launched Hyros, started getting good data. We got a little bit, we kind of go up, get a good baseline, but then those big major blips and what the data meant, how we could actually be in Facebook every single day. We added mass automation. And as you can see, as soon as we added the automation, that's whenever we started to see that steady increase in performance from our Facebook. Good data and good automations combined allowed us to pull ourselves out of the Facebook Ads Manager and allow longer windows of the and automations to perform. So we scale essentially using those 2 together. Then you see the iOS 14.5 hit, and it goes, boo. So how do you fix that, right? So we said, hey, we have a solution prior to iOS 14.55 now, and we have to figure out what we're going to do there. So those 2 platforms, Hyros and Magics, were not integrated. We were just looking at them separately. Well, now that they're integrated, the solution was we can allow the data of Hyros to integrate into Magics and essentially automate the good data of Hyros and the automations of when to scale. I don't know if somebody knows this or heard of this before, but there's something that we call ad surfing. Essentially what ad surfing is to us is when, as we know, in the Facebook, Google world, we're in a bidding marketplace when we're running ads. So we're bidding for ads. Essentially, some will enter the market, exit the market. But when they enter the market, your CPAs go because you're spending more money to compete. When they exit the market, you have less competition. So we want to have the ability to create automations that say when there's less competition, increase our ad spend. When we can get, lower CPAs, higher CPMs for cheaper, we want to leverage that ability. So when someone exits the marketplace, we have automations in place that say increase ad spend, lessens our purchases and scale. So we kind of serve those trends whenever we see people enter and exit the marketplace. The integration allowed us to create consistency with this, the 2 of these being integrated. We updated both the rules data, and we're starting to see a little bit increase in performance for the ads. So steps to implement this, you just got to get Hyros, which Hyros integrate with any of your channels, Google, your Bing, your Facebook, anywhere you got traffic coming into, use UTMs. Definitely update your Facebook with it. And then get Magics and integrate with Hyros, and then Magics will allow you to create the automations. The automations are going to rely only on Hyros data, Facebook data, iOS, none of the other issues that we're having. And then you're obviously going to make more from Facebook ads. So a couple problems that we knew prior to doing this was, again, you have to give the data some time to perform. Give Magics automation rules 7 days to learn. Anytime you set a rule in Magics, give it a good week or 2 to actually learn what that rule means in Facebook. Trust your automation, trust your data. The data you get from a Hyros is going to be a lot better than Facebook now, given that the iOS updates and how they form. Remember, Facebook's still sensitive. You're going to have swings, depending on day to day. But like I said earlier, just keep playing the big picture game, the 14-day to 30-day C-day windows. So some custom automation rules that you see in Magics. You can just set your ad spend, so if it's less than, 1 today, if daily budget is less than spending $50, you can some automation to say, if it's spending to increase the spend 20% every 4 hours. If I'm getting CPA below a certain amount, a CPA unique sale lower than, or greater than $25 to lower, whatever it may be. You can set those automations and it's going to automatically go inside Facebook or even Google if you're running ads there. And it's going to, go up or go down. Again, like I mentioned earlier, to surf the trend of how the ads are run, how you're spending your dollars on Facebook or Google. One of my favorites here is just if your return spend is greater today than it was, like say 1.2, it was the previous 7, 15, 30 days. You can have perform an automation and create a stop loss. Stop spending money if it goes below a certain return. And it's always a good thing to do is don't spend money if you're losing it, right? Some more automations. Just if website purchases greater than 1 today, you can increase your ad spend. Again, surf that for people buying a certain. If it goes down next, like you see those I mentioned, you can lower that spend automatically through Magics. So this is just an example of our automation scales. I can send this screenshot over. It gets a little detail. You're gonna have to figure out which one of these automations work for your business, but you can see it gets pretty detailed. Unique sales, return on ad spend, how frequently the ads being delivered to the customer, and whatever channel it may be running ads with. But yeah, that's kind of the outline. I'm gonna get out of this now and then go back to stop sharing, and then just mention, I know I blew through that a little bit, but the reality of the recap that was leveraging Hyros data, which does not leverage Facebook Marketplace or Facebook, Ads Manager, data. It's going to be inaccurate with the updates. And then mixing that with some kind of automation, whether it be Magic's other third-party platform, to perform your scale or decrease ad spends. That's how we are reacting to this update. We're seeing tremendous upside with the donation of the two. Instead of having a daily ads manager in there literally on every hour, we're now checking every 5 hours. And now we're focusing more on our email automations, focusing on our creatives, focusing on the things that we can do as marketers instead of focusing on the negative platforms give us like Facebook and Google and these update dates. So hopefully that makes sense.
Makes wonderful sense. Question for you, Cody. So you guys are obviously managing in-house, which is wonderful. Yes, Craig, you can everybody can put their contact info if they want in the chat. But how expensive are these platforms? Because I think one of the questions I see a lot is at what point should I hire an agency over doing it in-house? And one of the comments I made was that agencies, not all, but or even over a freelancer, is that agencies often have the budget to spend on these kinds of tools, which can more than cover the cost of having professional management. So I guess the question is really, where's the threshold there for where this, this makes sense if you've got somebody talented in-house versus.
Yeah, so the way to look at it is we keep a 5% software spend, 5% of our monthly revenue. If it goes over 5%, that's when we start looking at outsourcing. So meaning if our costs use up 5% of our gross revenue on something, then we have to start looking elsewhere to find, a solution somewhere else. So that's how we do it. We're in a majority different category than probably most people when it comes to revenue, but to add a $300 software, $1,000 in software, not that big of a deal. You're talking doing $5,000 to $10,000 revenue when you're spending $2,000 to $3,000 in software. That's when going to an agency that has the software in place. Couple extra thousand in ad spend a month is tremendous. It adds a lot of budget for a smaller brand.
Oh yeah, well, and because my specialty are smaller brands, so people will go, what should we spend? Well, this is where we start. But as long as you're hitting all your metrics for return, keep dumping money on it until you reach the point where you've maximized what you can get out. So to that end, what kind of total gain did you see over, by adding these tools over before you had them? Because the idea of getting that data is really fascinating.
Yeah. So, first question I ask in our agency world when we would run for other brands, now that we ask ourselves, is how many products can we present ship out? The end goal every single month is what can someone perform on fulfillment, and that's our goal from an advertising standpoint. We want to literally mount a safe capacity of delivering as many products as we can. So our essential threshold of of the automations and how high we want to go is we want to make sure that whoever's fulfilling products can keep up the amount of ad spend, ads, and what running there. Every time we bump up, I'd like to say a 20% week over week, month over month revenue. We always like to go back to fulfillment center, our house, have full fulfillment and say, okay, how was that? Did it throw anything out? Do we have a new employee? Do we need shipping manager? Do we need a shipping label produced? Like what is it going to take to stay up with that of demand? And then as we go gradually increase a lot. I think a lot of things that happen with an agency is they don't think about the actual fulfillment side of e-commerces. And they just say, okay, well, I'm scaling it and I'm getting 10x and I'm, all these big, great ROI. And it's like, yeah, but can they keep up? Because many times people will, and I've been there myself, they'll bankrupt business because get too many orders too fast. And then, you've got you're 30 days behind and your customer's mad. And, Facebook nowadays, you can just come on a Facebook page, they'll shut down from your Facebook page advertising and game over. We just went through that a couple weeks ago. We started a brand, we launched a new offer, we set these automations, this is great. Next thing you know, we're 14 days behind on fulfillment when we said it would be between 7 and 10. People are planning and boom, on the page, shut down our ad account. And essentially bankrupt the business because we have no business to run ads to now. And we're talking about brand name changes and making sure we fulfill orders that came through. And good thing about the data is it allows you to scale using those two automations, scale, some kind of pace. Typically people as and they just say, great, I'm getting ROI. Let me just keep cranking. Well, that doesn't always work whenever you can't fulfill.
That's a fabulous point of view. Before I load any more questions, does anybody else in here have a question? Okay, I guess I'm being the brave one. John, so as I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm, my wheels are turning because I do email campaigns right and left. So, and among the things we've really had fun with this year is segmenting into what people are buying. And then targeting or visiting if they didn't purchase yet, and then tailoring everything we send to them to where they've genuinely expressed interest. Have you seen anybody yet move to where they're really kind of looking at the actual return, either clicks in or actual revenue or number of sales for their campaigns as the way to measure success?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that's the biggest key of like success metric is the revenue associated. Like there's different types of email campaigns that you can run. I mean, there's informational, there's like content based, and I think that's something you may actually see brands do a little bit more of, is like trying to engage with a consumer and just make sure that like they're providing value to them. I was on a webinar a couple of weeks ago and we were talking like post-purchase experience and trying to provide value via email, whether like you buy a tent or like a fishing pole or whatever it is. It's like, care instructions, like how to store it, like things like that can help build value and help build engagement. And people are like, oh, I'm going to open up this email from this retailer I bought something for. But ultimately the key to, the key metric in all of this is revenue. So it's revenue, that is one of the biggest things. Similar, Cody was talking about like automations and setting things up and, on the email side of things, automations, we put out a statistic report today, and I think it was like 39% of all email revenue came through automations, but it only represented like 2.3% of sends. So I think that's an area where people are going to try to double down is making sure that they're automating more. So if someone falls into a specific segment, like looked at a particular product, they'll trigger an email, or maybe they've looked at a particular page 6 times. Like let's trigger something that includes that product. But a very long-winded way of saying that I think it's going to be even more important to look at revenue per campaign, or revenue per automation, and it's going to be, it definitely becomes a bigger indicator of success if you're not able to track opens. So what's your click-through to revenue? What's your average, what's your RFM metrics around a specific consumer, or recency, frequency, monetary? That's ultimately what it's all about. We're not just sending emails to send email, we're sending them to make revenue.
Right. Are we going to, ultimately, is that revenue number still going to remain pretty accurate if I'm trying to predict either advertising or email? Anything I'm doing to drive traffic. Everybody looks at the bottom line. And of course, Google's last click attribution, unless you've learned how to set up attribution models, which most don't know how to do. I tried to teach a class in it, and I've never seen so many people eye rolls and struggle to stay awake. It's really, I'm a bit of a nerd, so getting into the data is fascinating to me. But again, if you're trying to measure what you're gained from, are we losing that ability, or are we still going to know that advertising's 20% of our revenue? And of course, I love to track assists, because you might think something isn't doing much for you, but it is part of your funnel that's helping to get people down to the bottom where they buy. So,
yeah, I would say, and buddy, I'll let you definitely answer on the digital side of things. But on the email side, many of the email providers are having to kind of rewrite the attribution side of things, because it was based off of X number of days since last open. So that's a fairly common change that we're seeing across the ESP space, or email service provider space. But it's, instead of attribution being based off of last open, it's probably going to be based off of last click. So there will be some changes to attribution, but should still be fairly accurate.
okay.
I would say that you may see a slight shrink overall, because it's like based off of click, it's almost kind of like honing down. But I would say, if anything, it's probably going to be even more accurate now, because you're starting to come down funnel a little bit more to what really matters. And it's like getting that person to the website from the email, and then ultimately trying to drive conversion.
Oh, you look.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that I would see from a sales attribution is going to be the ability to track back to the platform in which you're using. And then that's what's one thing I look at my dashboard of how many sales did I get, stripe it out, or Amazon Pay or whatever it may be. And then trying to make, I can track that back to whatever platform drove the sale. And that's what iOS and those other platforms do very well. Typically, we would just look in the Facebook ads manager sale. Facebook said we got some purchase, and it said it was this much in sales revenue. And this time we wouldn't even go look into the platform and see it's accurate. We just assume that's accurate. Work the ads manager on a daily, but no, being able to actually tie back real sales with what's being attributed. And now using these third-party platforms to get real data, accurate data, especially when it comes from not just email, but the paid ads, but now the social channels, the world's like TikTok, where you're not in ads, but you're getting such a high impression rate so fast, where sales are coming from, or where clicks originated from. I think that's important to know where it came from originally. Using third-party platforms, which are going to be, I think, critical, not just now with the whole iOS updates, but I think in the future. John's point is it's not going to go anywhere. We're always going to go back to the being just and then an email address of a buyer who's spent money, that's never going to change.
Yeah.
But now you can leverage the, the paid ad side of it, track back to your platform. I think that's critical.
Cool. Well, Zoom is giving us issues, and quite frankly, we're pretty close to the top of the hour, and our audience has shrunk. This will get posted. I actually have the recording this time, so we've had a couple issues with lost recordings. Thank you both, gentlemen. Really, I mean, I know a lot, and I learned some really cool stuff today. So I enjoyed it. I hope our audience enjoyed it. I think so, because we pretty much hung on to everybody till pretty close to the end. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Take care, stay well, stay healthy.
All right, absolutely. See ya.
All right, take care.